Welcome to Season 4 of the California Audio Roots Project. This season will focus on social justice and community involvement. Through our podcast, we hope to shed a light on social issues with unmoderated stories, poems, and music, as well as providing resources for our community.
Hi, this is Janet Seay. I'm here today with Moon Trent. Moon is here to talk about his journey of how he became a songwriter and tell us about his very interesting journey of how he got there. Welcome.
Thank you, Janet.
You were the oldest of three, born in Turlock. So tell us about growing up. Where was that?
That was in Denair, California, tiny little town next to Turlock, if you don't know where it is. Just a little oasis of the San Joaquin Valley. I think that was the motto of the town. When I was living there, there was less than 1,000 people in the 70s.
And your parents weren't musicians themselves, but they always had music on in the house. Your mother had a favorite. Who was that?
Oh, all her Barbra Streisand records. That was her favorite. She'd play a lot of Barbra Streisand in the house.
So it was a logical progression to you to join the choir and the band, fourth, fifth grade. Tell us what you did.
I was in some of the productions that the high school was doing where they needed a little kid. So I got to do some of those productions with the high school, even though I was only in the fourth grade. And then when I got older into junior high, I joined the school band and I played French horn and bass clarinet. And I continued singing with the choir, but I was always in the music programs out there.
So that put a little bit of a drama bug in you.
Sure.
That you were a star and you were the kid star. They always like those kid stars.
Yeah.
Tell us what you decided when you were in the 10th grade.
Well, I decided to move from Denair to Los Angeles by myself.
At age?
16.
Tell us how that went.
It was very challenging initially because I was only 16 from Denair, so I didn't know anything about the big city, Los Angeles County. So I moved around a lot in the 2 years there. I spent a lot of time kind of making friends, and I didn't know anybody there. I don't know why I did that. It was something to do when I was 16, and it turned out to be a great thing because I stayed in LA for 2 years. Made lifelong friends, and I got out of high school a year early even.
So you always had a job, but you tried to be an actor.
I did. I auditioned for many things in Los Angeles when I was a teenager, but never got one callback.
But you made friends.
Yeah.
Got your own apartment at age 16, which you can't even do anymore.
No, I don't think anyone will give you a lease at 16.
What did this do to your relationship with your family?
Well, it was kind of strained the whole time, which is partly why I left, you know. It was kind of hard at school, hard at home. It was 1987, and that's what I chose to do. It was kind of hard. You know, I didn't talk to my family for almost 2-3 years after that.
After 2 years, you gave it 2 years.
I did.
And then what?
I came back to Modesto. I lived in Denair for a little bit. I rented a room in a house, and I attended Stan State. They had a summer program for broadcasting.
We're at the KCSS studios in Turlock, California.
So I got to be on KCSS radio that whole summer. And at the end of it, I got a broadcasting license, which I don't think you even need anymore. But I have one with my name. And I took it to KHOP in Modesto, and they hired me.
It's inside, and we're coming up with it with Pale.
KHOP. As their morning show producer for 3 years. When I was 18, 19, and 20, that's what I did in Modesto.
And at the same time, you were going to MJC.
I was attending MJC.
But that was a very interesting time in your life because not only were you a radio personality, tell us a little bit about what that was like.
It was very interesting in Modesto in 1989, 90, and 91. KHOP was the big radio station, so I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. So I went right to the big one, and they let me do interning with Casanova at the nighttime shifts just to see how I would do. And then they moved me to the morning show, and I actually was third mic on the morning show. So I was talking the whole time. I'd come in an hour early and produce different pieces of materials, whatever we needed for contests and different things. Radio was very different in 1989 and 90 and 91. Everything was analog, so everything was on big reel-to-reel tapes, and it was different. Everything's digital now. It's so much easier.
During this time, you were working at K-Hop. You had many other interests. Of course, you still maintained your interest in music. And how had that developed over the years? You went from playing bass clarinet and French horn to what?
To fronting a band called Pale that I put together with some friends. And we actually got a record contract for 6 months. We got a development deal with a Warner Brothers subsidiary called Kinetic Records out of New York. We sent them a demo tape, and they came out to Los Angeles. We went down there and met. We auditioned in the hotel room. We just set up and played, and we got a record deal.
So you were the primary songwriter?
Yes.
And the singer?
Yes.
Another thing that happened during that time, a lot happened during that time, Moon. You were also going to MJC. You had your band, Pale. You met your life partner while you were there.
Yes.
And you developed a club. So I'd like to hear a little bit about all that.
Okay, sure. I wanted there to be a gay support group or social group at MJC, and there wasn't one. And I knew there were on other campuses, so I went in to try to figure out how to get that started. And I started a group called the Rainbow Generation that was at Modesto Junior College for 15 years, longer than I was, obviously.
And during that time, you would hold concerts. Tell us about that.
I was also involved with some friends that we had a thing called the Modesto Organization of Bands, the MOB. So we got together with Rainbow Generation and the MOB, and we put on a series of concerts. There were 4 in total. And my band played, and we did them in our backyard, which was probably a bad idea at the time. We did 2 there, and then we were able to rent the student center at the Modesto Junior College and had the final 2.
And you also did some concerts at the California Ballroom. Tell us about those.
Right. Well, Pale got asked to do some shows other than the ones we were performing or producing, and we played a show with Realm 4, Groggy Hunter, and Pale at the California Ballroom. And I always thought that was pretty exciting because Jimi Hendrix had played there. Some big cheese had come through that door. So I was like, whoa,
We've made it.
And it was exciting for other groups to ask us to play with them. You know, it felt like camaraderie.
What style of music was Pale?
Pale was like an electronic dance band. We did all keyboards and a little guitar, but it was mostly all programmed dance music. Kind of like Erasure or Depeche Mode. We wanted to be like them. Eurythmics, that kind of stuff. Because there was only 2 of us.
There was only 2 in the band.
Yeah, we were a duo. Paul Line was the keyboard player. We wrote songs together. He sang backup and I sang lead.
How long was that band together?
Pale was a group for about 5 years. And then when I moved to San Francisco, I started another band called Brown Star, and we were more of like a punk rock and roll band. We played for 5 years as well, but out in San Francisco.
Tell us a little bit more about the Rainbow Generation and how that went and how successful that was.
It went pretty well. I was not thinking that Modesto wanted this club. But when I went into the meeting to kind of finalize everything, all the other clubs were in there with me. And the first person to second the motion to have the Rainbow Generation was the president of the Ag Club. So I was really excited because I thought for sure these guys are going to turn their nose up at us. And it was my own prejudice that kept me back a little. And it was suddenly a club. We had a sponsor. One of the teachers was our mentor. It was a club officially. The 2-3 years that I went there, I was president. My partner David Cole was president. My cousin Anthony Ferret was president. So we just kind of kept passing the torch to people. We did those shows, like I mentioned, with Modesto Organization of Bands. We did all kinds of events, the Rainbow Generation.
Just to raise money.
We did try to raise money, and we were probably the most successful club on campus because of it.
And what was the mission of that club?
The Rainbow Generation was made to have like a gay support place where you could go if you weren't out of the closet or if you had a gay friend or a gay son. Like my mom came and spoke at Rainbow Generation, just kind of talked to all the kids about being a mom of a gay kid. David's mom came in as well, and they were able to ask her all kinds of questions. So it was really kind of like a supportive, safe space. And we didn't know to call it a safe space back then, but that's exactly what it was.
At some point, you decided to move up to San Francisco, you and your partner, to both go to school. Was that the only reason you moved to San Francisco?
There was just so many gay people there. I thought it would be kind of great to take my gay partner and I and move us somewhere gay. You know what I mean? I wanted to go to school too, but I was already going to MJC. I went to City College in San Francisco, so I could have done that here, but there's just so much to do out there for young gay men. So we were really excited to kind of like take all that in for a while.
And when you did move up there, David was going to school probably primarily.
Yes.
But you got a really cool job. Where was that?
I was working at Tower Records on Market Street in the Castro, and it was so fun. I remember going in to interview for the job, and I was kind of scared because he's asking me, like, what are you doing up in San Francisco? And I said, oh, my boyfriend and I moved up here. He's going to school, and I want to work at Tower. And he said, oh, my boyfriend and I just moved to this new place in San Francisco. And I was like, whoa, my boss is gay? Wow, there's, like, gay bosses? This, like, I couldn't believe it, you know? I'm from Denair. It was like gay Disneyland. You have to pay to get in, even across the bridge. So I always thought San Francisco was such a magical place, especially for a young gay man. And I have so many great memories of San Francisco, going to pride parades and Castro Street Fair, Folsom Street Fair. It seems like there's always a street fair, Haight Street Fair. There was so much to do. And it is an expensive place to live, but San Francisco really puts on some good parties that you can just go to.
And it wasn't always super expensive.
No.
Tell us about your apartment that you had for, what, $800?
There was an apartment we looked at and we got at Oak and Baker by the DMV and the Panhandle of Golden Gate Park. And it was $750. In 1993, we moved into that apartment. And that was expensive, we thought. Because I'd been renting a house over on Beard Avenue in Modesto for $200. So my rent, like, tripled, but it wasn't even expensive, you know, for rent.
Right, because wages probably helped.
Sure, I could work at a little record store and still pay my rent. Nowadays, that's unheard of. I know the apartments are like $3,000 and little apartments like we had, little ones.
The little tiny ones.
Yeah.
During your tenure in San Francisco, you decided you were still writing music, singer-songwriter, but you also decided to maybe test out that acting bug a little bit. Tell us about that.
This is true. I went to the Helen Hayes acting agency, and they represented me, and they would send me on different calls. And one that I got,
A wacky professor invents a formula. It's Flubber!
I was an extra for 3 days on the Disney film Flubber with Robin Williams. So that was really exciting to get to be on a set with him for 3 days and get paid. You know, that was unheard of. I only got to do a couple things like that, but that was the most exciting one.
In case you've just joined us, this is Janet Seay. I'm here with Moon Trent, talking about his adventure of life. You stayed in San Francisco for quite a few years, and then at some point you decided to move to England, and I'd like to know why and what happened.
Well, I really thought I could be part of the music scene in England for some reason. I thought, let's move the label and the band, let's move everything to England. So we went, and it was 2001, same year as 9/11. So we were there for 9/11. We weren't even in America when that happened. And it was really scary, you know. We all have how scary that was. But we got deported. We couldn't stay in England anymore past January. So we left, came back to Denair and Modesto area, went back to San Francisco for 2 years, and then we were just priced out. And now we've been in the Valley since 2004.
So you mentioned that you moved to England and you took your record label with you. Was this record label something that you started in England?
No, we actually started it in Modesto before we even left to San Francisco or England. We started in 1991 so my band could release a tape, Pale. And that was the very first thing we put out. And then we put out another Pale tape. Then by then we were already in San Francisco, and we put out a CD by a band called Spackle. featuring some members from Modesto and some members from San Francisco. So we just kept going on, and now we're on our 25th release.
Wow. So exactly what does that mean? You started a record label. What is that? What does that entail?
We started pressing records and selling them. But they were cassettes at the beginning. We had a big console that would dub several tapes at a time, and we would just do that, wrap them up, and sell them. We had a business license back then, but now we just do it through the mail order business. It's not a huge conglomerate or anything. It's Dave and I sitting at the kitchen table mailing things out. We're not rich from it by any means, but we have a body of work. And if you go on Discogs or any Google Timmy Cat Records, all of our releases come up.
And what's really interesting about this record label is the phone number.
Oh, yeah. We've got the number of Tommy Two Tone's Jenny song. The number to call Timmy Cat Records in the 209 area code is 867-5309.
E-I-E-I.
Isn't that a scream? And I've been trying to get that number for years. And the way it came about was a month ago, AT&T called me and asked if I wanted another line for, no money, $13 a month. And if so, I says, I'll do it, but let me pick the number. And he says, you'll be active by Wednesday. Oh, man, was I excited. And I do. I get calls from everywhere, all over the country, all over Canada, and even some from other countries. I don't know why, because I'm in 209, and there's a lot of area codes. It just happens to be that's the one that I have is 209. It seems like a lot of drunk party people like to call on Friday and Saturday night. I have to turn my phone down because I'm constantly ringing, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to have this much longer. I don't know. It seems like an exciting thing right now, but I can see how it could fill up my phone quickly, fill up my voicemail and everything.
That's awesome. When you came back to the Valley from England, and then you went back to San Francisco.
Yes.
And tell us about your job.
So that was just a couple years. The last job I had, that stint in San Francisco, was at UCSF. I worked in the student center helping kids get appointments with their counselor. I would just type it in, blah, blah, blah. It was a very easy job and fun. And then I came in one day and there was a kiosk, which meant they could come in themselves and type everything in. So I lost my job.
Replaced by a machine.
Who'da thunk?
At this point, David had his degree.
Yes.
In education, and you came back to the Valley, and you were kind of thinking that you wanted to get into that as well. So tell us that story.
Yeah, I just decided one day I need to get into a steady line of work. So I went for education, and I've been rewarded and been very happy. Being a instructional paraprofessional level 3 now is what I've worked up to. And I might end up in one of the offices working as a clerk, because I've done it so long that I'm thinking that's the next step. But we'll see.
But you work with special education.
I do.
Students. So you work with the moderate, severe?
I work in an SH class, severely handicapped.
Severely handicapped. And what does that entail?
Quadriplegics, kids on wheelchairs, walking with braces on their legs and crutches, things like that.
You basically just meet all their needs that aren't educational.
Correct.
So that they can get through the education of their day.
Every little thing that you take for granted, you have to do for the students.
Basically, for 6 to 8 hours a day, just sit right with a student.
Yes.
Well, that's got to be very rewarding.
It is. It is, actually. I'm at a new assignment this year that I started in August, and now we're in almost November. So I've got into the groove of this new job, and I really like it.
Meanwhile, you have never stopped writing music. You have always been a singer-songwriter, actually since you were a kid. And you have always maintained your record label. Tell us about some of the adventures that you've had with that.
Well, the most exciting things is that I get to put out records by my friends. Some of them, like William Morain, we put out his Spanish-speaking album. So beautiful. I don't speak Spanish. David has a Spanish literature degree and was friends with him, so that's how he came into the fold. But it's a beautiful album, even though I don't speak Spanish. We put out 2 compilations albums going on the 3rd. So that means like 30 different artists have given us tracks and are on Timmy Cat Records. So it's just an exciting way for me to spend my time, and my passion is music. So I'm not always putting an album out, I'm putting other people's albums out. But yeah, we're going on number 25 right now.
Do you record these albums?
Sometimes we do. Sometimes albums come completely done. Sometimes we're the ones that have to find a producer to work with, or a studio or something, depending on where I'm living.
Do you have any cool, interesting, anecdotal stories about your record label?
I sure do. I was putting together an album in '98. It was called Milkshake, a CD to benefit the Harvey Milk Institute. And we were lucky enough to get Chumbawamba, who were really big at the time. They had that song, Tub Thumping. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. So we wrote to them. We wrote to most of these people on the internet and said, we're putting out these compilations to benefit the Harvey Milk Institute. Would you like to be on it? And they sent us little DAT tapes. The way we met Chumbawamba, we heard that they were going to be at the Fillmore. So we called down to the Fillmore. David did, actually. And he said, hey, you got to go down to the Fillmore. The Chumbawamba's there. So we went down and they let us in, and we gave them our record. They gave us their record. And that was it. We met them. They were big stars in England, and they were big at the time. And then, like, Pansy Division has been on 3 of our compilations, and they're a big deal because they're like the first gay rock band, and they opened for Green Day on that big tour, and they got a lot of publicity. There's just been so many artists that we've worked with. We try to work with local artists, like French Cassettes are from Ripon. We've done shows with them. The Pandas are from like Patterson. There's all these little groups in the valley, and we try to work with all of them, put them on compilations or concerts that we can.
Are they primarily gay bands or not necessarily?
The latest compilation, we did focus on gay artists. It's called Friends of Dorothy, and it's coming out in December, I believe, on Lavender Vinyl. We're only going to make 200 copies of it. So after we distribute them, there's 17 songs on this album. It's our most ambitious release we've ever done. So be looking for that soon. All this information can be found at my website, moontrent.com. And there's different sections for Timmy Cat Records and all of my releases. And pretty much everything that's ever been written about me has been scanned and uploaded to this website. I have a really great friend from England. He moved to New York. He's now a citizen, and he does my website out of New York.
Very cool. I understand that you also got to work with Howard Stern. Tell us about that.
Survey says it's time for the gay feud.
You must be beautiful for these things. You see.
Yes, I've been on the Howard Stern Show twice now. Once was in '98 in New York, so this goes back some time. I was on a game show he was putting together called The Gay Family Feud. And I had made a website about his producer that I was a big fan of, Casey Armstrong. So Casey called me and said, do you want to come to New York and be on the Howard Stern Show? And I said, you know what? My band Brown Star is playing in New York next week at Queer Eruption. It was a big show. So we got invited there and the Howard Stern Show. And the Queer Eruption people said, if you go on Howard Stern, do not talk about our event. We don't want those kind of people coming down to this show in Brooklyn. So we were just like, oh, wow, we've got this big opportunity and we can't even talk about it, because they were really against Howard Stern. All the gay people were against him. And I was like, you know what he did for us today? He put us on a gay game show and was totally nice. So anyway, I have good feelings for Howard Stern and a good experience. Then in 2004, they called me again and flew me to Las Vegas to do kind of the same thing. They put me up for a week for 20 minutes of television. And I always think that's very generous, because they didn't have to do any of that, but they did it all for me. I think we won $5,000 on the show, split between 4 of us. So that was kind of good. I'd never been to Vegas, so that was good.
And you had a little bit of money to spend.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear about Timmy Cat Records. I understand that there's an interesting story about how that came about, and you were quite a young lad when you did this. Tell us about that.
I was about 13 years old, and I decided I wanted a record label because David Geffen had one. And I thought, I'll call it Moon Trent Records. No, I'm going to call it Timmy Cat Records. And Timmy was in a Molly Ringwald movie called Surviving that was on television. And her cat in the movie was named Timmy. So I took Timmy Cat from Molly Ringwald, started that idea when I was about 13, and then finally made it happen in 91 when we put out the first Pale tape.
For those that might be interested in Timmy Cat Records and just learning more about Moon Trent and Timmy Cat Records, how would they go about that?
We are all plugged in on moontrent.com. We also have a presence on Instagram and Facebook, and they're both under Moon Trent, one word. Then if you want to give us a call some crazy night, you can give us a call at 209-867-5309, as many people have done and will do.
Moon, first off, I absolutely love your name, Moon Trent. That's just a great name.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you for coming in and talking to us about your very interesting adventure.
Thank you so much for having me, Janet. I love Modesto Sound, and I'm so excited to be part of this project.
This program has been brought to you by the California Arts Council and KDA Creative Corps.